I have to try hard to listen to everyone. So please don't think it's exclusively like a me and you thing. Like this happens broadly because I see that a lot in couple conflict. Like the one person just feels like you listen to everyone else, and they were like, no, at work I'm like really caffeinated, or like I'm really trying. Like this is not an easy skill in general. So I think that's important.
ADHD Rewired, episode 506. This is the podcast for those of us with really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and a coach by design. I'm your host, and I have ADHD. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community. We are wired for connection, and you are not alone. Go to ADHDrewired.com to learn how you can join us in our free and secret Facebook group. Get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter. You can request podcast postcards to distribute to your clients and support groups. Learn all about our award-winning coaching and accountability groups. You can co-work with us in our Adult Study Hall virtual membership community. You can do all of these things by going to our website at ADHDrewired.com. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. Today's guest is Dr. Ali Arena. Dr. Ali Arena is passionate about social cognition, language processing, executive functioning, and creating meaningful friendships and relationships. She's both a speech and language pathologist and a board-certified behavior analyst. She has a doctorate degree in educational leadership and is becoming a licensed educational psychologist. She uses a neurodiversity affirming and trauma-informed lens when working with all clients. Her doctorate focus was unique, to say the least, as it addresses the dating intricacies of autistics, which led her to develop her private practice for anyone who wants help socially navigating in their workplace or relationships. Lastly, she feels social support is a biological necessity and wants to help all neurodivergent individuals to reach holistic communication. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you said something right before we hit record, as we were doing a little troubleshooting on the podcast. You know, by the time this comes out, we'll be past episode 500, and you said that you may have been the most tech challenged guest that I've had on.
I think it's true, right?
It might be. I think we've tried this like 5 different times. I've had to I know I had to reschedule with you, then you reschedule with me, and then
I hope I give you a good show. You know how long it's been? I don't use that bio anymore. So when I first started, it's all accurate, but like that's how long it's been.
You've gotten 2 different doctoral degrees in the meantime since you wrote that. All right.
Oh, man.
So how did you get into really focusing on relationships and the sort of the dating intricacies of autistic people?
You know, just like anyone else who becomes a therapist or does anything, they typically need it themselves, right? So if I look back, I have always found relationships really fascinating, probably because they were hard. I got married in 2021, but I moved in with my partner 3 or 4 years prior. And I slowly started to see like, wait, I'm not perfect and wonderful, and I do annoying things. I know, shocking. And when I really started to look at it, a lot of it was ADHD. And not that having ADHD is annoying by any means. That's not what I'm saying. But it is frustrating if your partner can't remember if they unloaded the dishwasher or not, right? Like that can feel frustrating. So there was a lot of that happening. And so I really started to delve into like, okay, so what is a neurodiverse relationship and how does that differ than a typical relationship? And then from then, I've just, I'm obsessed with all certifications. So I've looked at all different ways of looking at couples therapy.
So you like to collect degrees and certifications.
It is definitely my special interest. And my husband has actually cut me off. He's like, we don't have it in the budget for you to learn anymore. You're all done.
If you want to learn more, go to YouTube and take all the free stuff that's available out there. Okay.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that, I mean, I know that every individual and every relationship is unique and different in their own ways, but there's also a lot of themes that I'm sure you see emerging with who you're working with. Other than I think I emptied the dishwasher, but I'm not 100% sure. What are some of the other sort of themes that you see in neurodivergent relationships?
So a big one is parentification. So someone feeling like they're always like following up on the other person, asking if they did something, maybe like over explaining things. Another big theme is you're not listening to me, right? Because sometimes a neurodivergent person could truly just be delayed in processing, or I'm guilty of this. I look away, but I'm definitely listening. I heard everything you said. So sometimes there's not validation of listening coming across. There also can be different sexual preferences and agreement on how much touch and what works. And the other thing I see fairly often is neurodivergent people tend to need more alone time or recuperating time than maybe a neurotypical person. And so that can feel rejecting to another partner if it's occurring a lot. So just helping to navigate that.
Let's talk first about parentification.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. So, you know, I'll just try to share most of my story. My ex-wife, she had her own stuff. I have obviously ADHD and, some spectrum-y kind of stuff going on. You know, we were very accommodating. Well, what I thought was very accommodating to each other's kind of stuff. And that's how it kind of felt for many, many years, that we were just very accommodating. And then as, things in the relationship started to not progress and not evolve in the way that I was hoping, one of the things that I really realized is that this wasn't just like accommodation, that there's really was like this parentification, almost codependent kind of thing going on. I remember when we were going through the divorce process, realizing how many things that I was kind of just clueless about how to do. And then like feeling really frustrated about that like what the thing that I thought was great turned out like, no, that actually wasn't so great.
And then I'm sure your ex-wife, there was frustration on her end, right? Of maybe having to take on more than she thought she was going to. Yeah, it's frustrating.
And I think, for her stuff, like she's someone who likes to be able to maintain a lot of order and control. And so for her, it was great. She's like, if he's not involved with this, it can be just the way I want it to be. And for that, it was great until I was like, but you know what? I actually want to be more involved in these things. And then it was like, no, but you're doing it differently than I wanted that. So if someone is either new in a relationship or maybe they're the person that they are with, they feel that they can have good, open, hard conversations and they feel like this might be actually an issue. How do you suggest one of the partners bring this issue up?
So I think the first thing, right, you're saying is to have some self-awareness yourself, right? So how I knew that maybe I needed development in some skills was anything my partner said, a very large shame and defensiveness came up, right? Because it was typically that I didn't actually know how to do, and this is not surprising for a lot of ADHD individuals, what little stuff, I'm using quotations, like how to food shop for two people, cook for two people, not waste food, budget my bank account. Like, again, these are somewhat basic, but I didn't realize I didn't have that skill set. And so it took me a long time to really sit with, okay, I am in my 30s and I don't have this down. And instead of yelling at my partner and him feeling like he can't trust me because I'm not following through, I really need to sit and look at like, is it a skill deficit? Is it a direction deficit? So a lot of times my partner would say stuff like, hey, can you clean the kitchen? That might make sense to other people. But for a neurodivergent brain, it might be like, wait, what do you mean? Like, do you want me to unload the dishwasher? Do you want me to do the dishes? Am I wiping the counter? Is this include the stove? Like, what part of this do you want me to be doing? And so one thing that we did, I know I keep bringing up chores, is we got real serious on a chore chart and what we could each truly handle and know how to do. And that's really helped. I think also, though, again, being honest where you have a skill breakdown and then be honest about, I'm just never going to do that the way you're hoping. Like my husband would probably say I'm like a Neanderthal loading the dishwasher. Like he's just like, what? And he's an engineer. I swear he played Tetris like he could play it professionally. So he does that, right? We stopped the fight. So just being honest, like, and for me, that's totally like a visual processing thing. There's a lot going on there. So I think having a conversation of if you could bring in humor, if you could just be honest about what's a struggle, what you want support in. But then where parification gets a little frustrating is I don't actually want you to do this to every aspect of my life, right? So there's got to be a line where you can say, hey, I love that you're trying to support me. And you might think it's weird that I still use paper and pen for a to-do list, but I don't want to make it more efficient. Like that one, I'm just going to leave, right? So helping people see you don't need to help your partner in everything. And then, yeah, I think it's important as a neurodivergent person to just check in and be like, okay, if they weren't here, would I know where things are in my house? Would I know how to access my bank account? Like little stuff that like, just to make sure, would I know how to go get my dog? Cause I have the vet's number, just really checking in. And it's to be in partnership with someone, you both have to kind of show up and be able to do these things together.
When you were talking about the chores and the kitchen stuff, one of the things that I had with my ex, sort of this agreement. So I would clean the kitchen, and I would do a pretty good job. When I say pretty good job, like I would clean and put away 90 to 95% of the stuff. There was always something that I would like leave out that I was like just not see. Like it's there, but my brain is not processing. There was still a thing there that needs attention, and so the sort of arrangement we had that worked for a long time was, all right, I will take care of cleaning the kitchen, especially if you are the one that is cooking. This is a thing that I've done my entire life. Well, I will clean 90, 95% of the space, and I just won't see this last item. Can you just take care of that? And that kind of worked, right? It was
and
like,
not assume negative meaning, right? Not assume that you were intentionally like, I'm done. I just give up.
We actually had a thing we called the dishwasher moments, where it was like when one of us would be asking the other to do something and we were literally about to go do it. And it's like, how do you get the credit? Because you can't really prove that you're about to go do it.
Oh, it's such a thing. And again, my thing was always like, I already figured out I was going to do it. Right. And then it becomes this weird. So again, if you sound like me, really check, like, do you have a really high shame response? Why do you? Like, is there a reason for that? Did something like, have you been called lazy a lot in the past? You have some stuff to work through. Another big thing with that too is just checking back in like, hey, you may have just like, I heard you say, my partner might have been like, can you unload the dishwasher? And what I started doing was saying like, I heard you just say, I'm really annoyed you haven't unloaded the dishwasher, and really checking in of like, no, they're just asking a question. That's all that is.
I think that it's with my my current girlfriend who I've been with for about 2.5 months now. One of the things that's been such a welcomed sort of change of pace of any past relationship I've been in is just this ability to be able to share the stories and telling myself about like when stuff is like feeling off or uncomfortable, or like she says something to me and my brain goes to like the extreme, like, so if she's, voicing some kind of concern or complaint, and my brain immediately goes, oh, she's going to dump you now. And I'll just tell her that, like, okay, so here's what my brain is saying right now. It's been a really, because I'm currently in EMDR therapy, so I'm doing a lot of work on like so trauma therapy, like,
oh yeah,
because
but you're extra spicy. There's a lot of feelings,
there are a lot of feelings, and it's funny to end a marriage and then a 3-year relationship after that, both of which had a lot of conflict avoidance in it. And, really recognizing that, it takes two. And I was totally part of that equation. And for a while, didn't think that it was me, and that's why therapy is really helpful. It helps you realize these things. It's like, oh, I'm part of the problem. And so like when I'm then engaging in these healthy conflicts, like my sort of emotional response system, it gets activated. Like, it's like that anxious attachment stuff gets activated. Like, so by having someone that can regularly like just, hey, here's what's going on with me in this moment. Like, let me just reality check with you. And this is something that comes from Gottman's work. But there was a couple weeks ago, we were having a discussion about something that was kind of a hard discussion. She was a little upset with something that I did, and she pulled towards me in this. And she just said to me, she's like, I can be annoyed and upset with you and love you at the same time. And I was just like, wait, what?
You have to keep this person. Holy moly.
I know. I'm like, I've read about this. I've never experienced this though before. And so for me, it was like,
wow.
It was really amazing. And it continues to be amazing. So it's recognizing those communication patterns and how communication and relationships, whether you're neurodivergent or not, it's hard. Like there's no,
absolutely.
People aren't required to take classes on this stuff. It's only like people like you and me and our listeners who are like hungry for the personal growth work that like seek this kind of information out. Otherwise, we just tend to do what we've seen, and often what we've seen isn't real healthy or evolved.
It's so true. Yeah. And I think that's part of that self-development growth of not always being impulsive, right? And like thinking your immediate thought, like stopping. I mean, you're bringing up such a big skill that a lot of us don't think to do, to stop and check in and be like, what am I actually thinking about what they're saying?
Yes. Okay. Let's do this. I want to take a really quick break. So just in case you just tuned out, we're going to be talking about not listening after the break. So we will be right back. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from the members of our award-winning coaching community at coachingrewired.com, where you can learn more about our 10-week intensive online coaching program. We meet 3 times a week with daily accountability, and support continues after those 10 weeks. Do you have every intention of starting that next house project, writing your resume, launching your business, or incorporating a new habit only to lose traction and run out of steam sometimes before you even start? Are you anxious about planning the new year because you know how to plan, but nothing seems to stick? Or you just have no idea where to start? That's where coaching can help, because we're here to meet you where you're at. Your support can start with a group of people where you will be seen, understood, and accepted, no matter where you are on your ADHD journey. There is no one-size-fits-all approach to ADHD management, so it will be there for you to help you create your own personalized strategies that fit your unique and wonderful ADHD brain. So if you're sick of just trying harder and want to try something different, if you're craving real connection and community, and you can fully commit to 5 to 7 hours a week for our 10-week intensive coaching program, then why not get a head start by going to coachingrewired.com and get on our winter interest list. Come experience the ADHD Rewired difference. We believe in growth through community, because no one should have to ADHD alone. We'll be announcing registration dates for our winter season in the next week or so. Learn more at coachingrewired.com. That's coachingrewired.com. All right, we are back. All right, so if you've tuned out during the ad and everything, or maybe you fast forwarded, we're about to talk about not listening. So, are you listening? So, you had said something earlier on that I think a lot of neurodivergent people, whether it's ADHD or autistic or even just people with high anxiety, tend to have this processing where we need to kind of look away in order to actually process what's being said. Like in my coaching groups, there was someone who one day was having just some audio issues, and like their audio was not real clear. And I have auditory processing issues, so if it's not like crystal clear, it's like my brain is just like it's struggling, right? So I just had to say, I just need to apologize. I'm going to be closing my eyes in order to listen, so I can hear the words that you're saying. Otherwise, like I can't. And a couple people in the group said, like, oh, that's a regular thing for them. That in order to listen, they need to close their eyes or look away, right? And I think that to me, like, and this is something that I, working with individuals with autism for so many years, have learned to help people just advocate for themselves by sharing. Like, I know it might look like I'm not listening, but in order for me to really hear what you're saying, sometimes I need to actually look away.
That's great. Yeah. Like you need to be able to say that because you might do it in business meetings as well. It's not just in personal relationships.
What are some of the other ways that you help people on the sort of the listening component, or the appearance of not listening, or the actual I tune out because what my partner's talking about is so fucking boring that my mind just like it goes anywhere else? Because I am sure that happens too.
100%. So let's go with the tune out. I'm guilty of it. And my partner is he explains it all, right? And so one thing I will do, I don't have my ring on right now, but I will kind of mess with my ring because it just sort of checks me back into like you're in your body, you're listening. Or we do an evening walk, and that's kind of when we do the check-in. And most neurodivergent people actually listen better when they're doing something, right? Like two things at one time. So that really helps me. The other thing is to really just check in on like, I didn't realize this for a long time, but to really hear my partner. I'm basically in my kitchen and that's my living room, right? So if he was talking to me from the living room and I'm in the kitchen and he had the TV on, I could hear him, but I could not process it. So we've really talked about how like you can't have both on. There's no way I'm hearing, even if I do the like, I didn't process it. Like we've just learned. So really checking in, like that doesn't work for a lot of people. Really making sure you have eye contact, I think is important, and setting stuff up. So my partner will say something like, hey, can I talk to you? I have a few things I want to go over for the weekend or something. And again, you have to sort of make sure that statement doesn't sound scary to your partner, like desensitize that. I know when he says, can I talk to you? It's not anything negative. It's like, when are we taking the dog to the vet? Like making a to-do list type thing. Another thing around listening, this is a Gottman thing, right? Having relationship, like some people call them state of the union, some people call them like communication check-ins, but we do ours on Sunday and it's like 25 minutes, but it really is for that like administrative type work where I literally have a piece of paper and I can figure out when I'm going to follow through on those things. And lastly, just owning, I totally just zoned out. Can you say it again? But like, I totally just zoned out. Can you say it again? I realize that could be frustrating, right? So like also acknowledging that's a little annoying and really having a conversation with your partner around, I kind of suck at listening with everyone, or I don't, not that I suck at listening. I have to try hard to listen to everyone. So please don't think it's exclusively like a me and you thing. Like this happens broadly because I see that a lot in couple conflict. Like the one person just feels like you listen to everyone else and they were like, no, at work I'm like really caffeinated or like I'm really trying. Like this is not an easy skill in general. So I think that's important.
How do you cope with going out to eat like at a noisy restaurant?
You know, I guess I truly don't do it that much anymore.
So
Or
you
I'll
just
like
avoid
sit
it.
outside. Yeah, like I feel like I do find that challenging. Like I've noticed that like if we go to like a bar or something, after a drink, I'm like, can we walk somewhere else? Like I can't take in what you're saying.
I remember last weekend, my girlfriend and I, we're in the city. We walked into some bar, and I was just like, no, like it's too loud in here.
Yeah.
Like I can't even hear myself
Yeah.
thinking here. Like,
Yeah.
All right, so and that, and that's frustrating too. It's even as a parent. Like let's say if I even have like the news on because I'm making lunch or dinner or something, and then my son is trying to talk to me about something while he's in the upstairs bathroom and I'm downstairs. And I was like, okay, I can't, it's like my brain just says I wants to have like a meltdown because it's like, it's just so much information and I can't even like communicate in that moment of like, okay, wait, let me hit pause or let me stop what I'm listening to. Please come down and be in the same. Like, I've told my son so many times, like, I don't care what it is you want to talk to me about. Do it in the same room that I'm in.
And I think with your adult partners, right, it's super important. Like I've really started to be like, hey babe, remember, I can't take in what you're saying. Like, so we got like, if this is truly important, please come look at me.
It's I think in every relationship that I can remember being in, I get called out so quickly if I am on the phone with them and I'm like looking at something on my computer or scrolling at something on the phone, like within 10 seconds, they know it. I'm like, I have no idea how they can tell so quickly. So I'm just like, okay, sorry. And I'll just own it. And it's hard. It's hard.
It is.
Um, okay. So the listening piece. Now, what about one of the issues I had with my ex is like she likes to give a lot of information. Like I would sometimes joke and say, "Okay, your parentheses have parentheses, and I need the bottom line. Otherwise, I'm not going to process any of it." And that was hard for her to do because, like, for her, like she felt this like she compelled that she needed to include every thought about the thing. It's like my brain just gets overloaded. In that kind of dynamic, what would you suggest?
That exists in my household currently. I think one thing is I sort of like conserve energy for when my partner comes home. So like if he comes home, let's say I'm on a Zoom, when I go to talk to him, I'm in a place where I like want to listen and I want to hang out, right? So I really try to like set myself up that like I'm not closing the computer and then looking at him because I'll already be depleted, you know? So like giving a little space.
Mm.
And then I call it, his name's Sebastian. I'm like, okay, are you going to do a Sebastian explanation? He's like, yeah, because I got to give you all parts. So I'll literally be like, okay. And will like sit down and I'll like take it in. And we've also started to see the power of that, right? Like how his brain works. He gets us awesome flights because he'll sit there for 10 hours. So I said to him, we're finally in a place of I'm like, hey, I don't need to know how you got to the flights. Just give me one or two. We'll pick and then we'll go from there. And he's finally okay with that. So it's taken time though.
Have there been certain things that you two have decided to like? This is probably best to communicate in a text.
So I have tried that. There is still something with him. I think he feels as I don't even know, like a disrespect. Like we live in a home, we should be able to communicate verbally. So there's that too, right? Like your partner's gonna have stuff as well that they need to they might find something you're doing is really disrespectful. So you got to check in. You really got to have a conversation with him. I'm like, what is disrespectful about what I'm doing and try to break that down. Cause listening can equal to respect to a lot of people. They are the exact same thing. So if you hear your partner saying something like you're being disrespectful, really check that. Be like, but what part of this is feeling so I think what I've said, so when we fight, I fatigue way quicker than him. And I will literally say, like, I need a break. I'm not listening. I can't even. So during fights, we have found, at least for me, because I'm a delayed processor, that if I just text him 20 minutes later, we're in a way better place because then
Mm.
I'll digest everything. I don't know if he loves it. I'm going to be honest, but he's accepted that that's a way to communicate.
And I think that like relationships are a dance, and like we're gonna step on toes regularly. The
Yeah.
idea is that we try to be mindful of when we do that and make those repairs. And like I was saying earlier, when my girlfriend kind of turned towards me in this argument that we were having, and just how kind of like just significant that felt to me,
Yeah.
right? That like it's this constant negotiation and renegotiation because the thing that might be working for a while maybe isn't working anymore for whatever reason. And so I think it's so helpful to always be generous with our assumptions of others' intent and then check in with
Yes.
what we're thinking.
Yes.
Okay, so we're talking about listening, and you also talked about how often it is for neurodivergent people to need more alone time. And hell yes, I agree and support this idea wholeheartedly because I definitely am someone who needs alone time and just I need me time without an intent, just like to do whatever whatever is appealing to me in that very moment. That's part of how I recharge.
Absolutely.
How do you communicate that, especially if you're maybe new in a newer relationship, or maybe it's not a new relationship? Is there a difference to how you communicate that need depending on where you are in a relationship?
Yeah. So I think it's really important first to think of the proactive strategy of when you are with your partner, be with your partner, like be doing something because then you are more connected and really figuring out what that is for like the walk I was talking about with my husband. It does seem to really work for us. We feel connected. We may like stop into a place on a walk. It really tends to work for us. We realized what didn't was in COVID, we just got so used to watching like a million shows, but we weren't actually feeling like connected in any way. So again, pick the times that you're going to connect and then also pick like anchors during your week, right? So some people do like Tie Tuesday or like Friday night date night, whatever those things are, because if you have those set, it's way easier to then have the conversation of, hey, this Thursday, like I've just been feeling really stressed. I'm just going to take like, I call it a me night. I'm just going to kind of like be upstairs and like, it, you know, you can negotiate even further. Like, so could you take control of the dog or whatever? So I can honestly just do whatever from 5 p.m. till 10 p.m. So again, but also talking about how much it recharges you and why you need it, I think is important. And then if you can, I know it's not always, but like, no, if you know that about yourself, it is probably important to look for partners that do have hobbies, do have things that they like doing on their own, because that will feel less conflictual.
We do need to take another quick break. When we come back, let's talk about all things sex, sexual preferences, and, because that's going to be the thing that's going to keep people listening. And it's important. So we will be right back. All right, it is time for your favorite ad, the ad that's not really an ad. Are you a night owl or have a really bad case of one more thing-itis when it comes to going to bed? You get in bed, you keep telling yourself, just one more video, or one more meme, or one more round of Candy Crush, even after declaring bedtime. Well, we've got you covered. Introducing the Accountability, like buddy, but bed-y. It's the app that takes your I'm going to bed promise seriously. So here's how it works. You tell your accountability buddy that you're going to bed. But then you sneakily decide to check your phone for, just a minute. Surprise, the Accountability springs into action. Here's how it works. There's a night owl alert where your phone will start to automatically call your accountability partner, ensuring that you've been busted. It also includes a feature for persistent texts. It will send messages like, guess who's still up? And those messages will even cut through all of your accountability partner's do not disturb settings. When you know what you want to do, but your brain is just not switching into sleep mode, when that one more thing-itis keeps you scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, this app might be a real game changer for you. If it were real, which I really wish it were because I really could have used it this week. And while this app isn't real, you know what is? The support you can get here from ADHD reWired. From our coaching groups to our adult study hall co-working community to our free Facebook community to ongoing support after our 10-week award-winning coaching program. We've got a little something for everyone. You can also support us on Patreon. Everything that I just mentioned can be found at ADHDrewired.com. That's ADHDrewired.com. And now back to the third half of the show. All right, we are back. So let's talk about sex and neurodivergent relationships. We could probably do an entire episode just on this, if not a whole series. So in the 10 or 15 minutes that we have left here, what do you see as patterned differences in neurodivergent relationships around sexual preferences?
So one, if we just think about sex is touch, right? So one, figuring out like what type of touch your partner likes. Do they want heavy touch? Do they like holding hands, right? So really learning that about your partner. I call it, literally, this is so weird. I'll ask my partner, I'm like, can you anaconda me? And what that means is just like, throw your body on me and give me like a big hug, like basically like a weighted blanket.
I love that.
He thinks it's so weird. He knows I need it. Like, so it just works, right? He likes back scratches. I apparently like an anaconda. I don't know. But so like figuring that out and giving that to each other, right? When you need it. And then also with sex, each person should kind of figure out. I find that a lot of my neurodivergent women in particular can be a little on or off, right? So I really, really, really want sex. And then I have no desire for it because I'm really into something else. So if you know that about yourself, one, see if there's a way to maybe not be as on. So then when you're off, it's so severe, because that can feel really challenging to a partner, right? If you're like super sexually into them for a few weeks and then just nothing and like a continued nothing, it can start to feel like a rejection. So communicating that I think is important. And then sort of understanding too, like, is there a way for you to balance it out more? Also, toys. I tend to find that, again, a lot of neurodivergent people have a sensory system that's under aroused, right? So something like a toy can really help to enhance, but also almost just make something feel typical. Again, I'm using quotation marks, but really just help to the whole experience. So again, talking to your partner about that, there is sometimes some thought processes around toys mean that you don't think like I'm good enough, right? That you need to bring something else in. So really having conversations around that, about this is more of just a sensation thing and me needing more than another person. Trying to think what are other big things about sex. I think the other thing too is if someone is they have like a lower arousal system, they may need sex to be a little bit more rough or intense. And so learning ways to communicate that feels safe to the other person and helping the other person see that difference is important too.
How much overlap do you see, whether in your clinical practice or even in the research around neurodivergent people and say like the hypersexuality or in the kink community? Because from the things that I've seen, it seems like there's a high correlation between people who are really interested in kink and identify as sort of hypersexual. But I've also seen like the opposite of that too, like the very sort of hyposexual. So that's, reading forums on the internet, right? So it's like, okay, like, is this a representation or not?
I mean, I think you're kind of onto something though, is that the neurodivergent community, not surprisingly, tends to go to two ends of a spectrum, right? And they do really live there. And I think the neurodivergent community is just so much more chill around like sex, sexual orientation, sex with numerous people, like because they tend to be a little bit clear in communicating and what they want around this. So I just think I find a lot of my neurodivergent friends are way more open to exploring different things. And then also you think about like the kink and the hypersexualization. Unfortunately, a lot of our neurodivergent community has also had a decent amount of trauma, right?
Yeah.
So it's a lot of these things like correlate. And then on the other side, right, if you're sort of hyposexual, same thing, like a lot of rejection that may have led to that feeling. So just also thinking about like we all come with a sexual history.
And have you seen the research that saying something like it was like 65% or something of like adults with that identify as autistic also identify somewhere in the LGBT. Like it was a huge number.
It's a massive amount. And I'm even seeing it a lot of my marriages that the people have been together like numerous years. Once the person realizes that they are autistic or neurodivergent, it's like within a year or 2 years that they start to say, wait a second, I think I also like this type of person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like it's just interesting how when that journey starts, that the other journey does as well.
For me right now, personally, it's so, I have shared it with all my past partners that like I'm bisexual, and all my past partners have been pretty supportive of that. My current partner is also bisexual. It's been this like, it's like the difference between someone who has studied ADHD versus someone who like actually has ADHD and genuinely gets it.
Yeah.
It has been a really profound, like I would not have imagined how significant that difference actually is to not just be accepted for that, but actually like as part of why she likes me. It's this really validating, like, oh, this is like, I'm not just being accepted or tolerated. It's like, oh, like we can have fun with this. And it's amazing.
I think that statement alone is what I hear from a lot of neurodivergent couples is like, I feel like they're just tolerating me. Or sometimes I hear language of like the partner, the neurotypical partner will be like, okay, but their ADHD makes them do that. And so I think as a therapist, right, with any difference, it's really helping to talk about like, this is the person, like they have ADHD. It's not going away. They're not shedding it. They're not like being lazy. They can't medicate it, like, and I think that's with anything that's considered different, right? Like really making it known, like that's a part of a person's identity. That's who they are. If a person, regardless of sexuality or regardless of neurodiversity, if they have to constantly explain why they think something or why they do something, it can feel really draining.
In your work, how do you help people sort of start these conversations? I think that learning how to like begin these conversations, I think is probably one of the more challenging parts. I think once you start talking about stuff like this, then it becomes just part of the way you interact.
So I think one thing is, again, to get really clear on yourself. Like when I really started to understand where ADHD was in my life, I was able to then communicate much more clearly, right? So as opposed to if a person maybe called me out on something, since I didn't really understand why I was doing it, I would just assume what they were saying was correct, right?
Mm.
Yeah, you're right. I wasn't listening. Or yeah, I said I would get that done and I didn't. Like I must not really follow through. All these statements, right? So like learning yourself and really understand what's happening and then being able to communicate that, I think is important. Because there are plenty of people out there that are like, yeah, I know what ADHD and autism is, but they don't really like, they think ADHD is like, just go get medication and you're fine. Right. So one of the ways my partner and I started to talk about it was not me actually talking to him, but me sending him a podcast that I was like, hey, you might like what this is saying. This might help to explain me a little bit more. And that really started to help. Right. We read the ADHD in couples books. There's plenty of other books. Like we read them together. But I will say, I think the only reason he started to support doing those is some of the things he was frustrated by. He could tell I was trying to change, quote unquote, but it wasn't happening. So I think he also started to see, okay, we got to look at this differently because I'm just going to drive myself nuts if I think something's going to be different.
What do you suggest as far as like timeline for if someone is on the dating apps or it's trying to, when do you disclose your neurodivergence?
Yeah, I know that one's so hard. I hear that so often. I don't think you do it right away. This is me personally, right? I have no research on this, but I think it's really important to make sure like the person you're talking to is actually somewhat mentally health informed. So if you tell them like, oh, sorry, it was a really busy day and I was feeling stressed out, and they say something like, oh, just work harder tomorrow. Like you have a good idea of like, okay, stress, all this is not a word, I've definitely had someone say that to me in dating. That's why I use that example. But I think seeing what their understanding is, starting with statements just like, if, they ever maybe are like, oh, I noticed you're looking away. You could say something like, yeah, I just know myself and I tend to look away when I'm processing information. It's something I've always done, and see how they react to stuff like that and start to get an idea. I'm seeing dating apps though, where people just have it out there anyway. So it's already like knowledge that people know. And I think it's also looking at the communities, like the LGBTQ plus community tends to have a bunch of neurodivergent people. So it's not all that shocking that you may be with another neurodivergent person, as opposed to some of the apps that are more like corporate based, like lawyers meeting lawyers, that may not be something they're disclosing. So just looking at, again, like what they know about each other. And I think it also comes down to your own comfort level. So like if I was dating now again, I'm fully aware my ADHD has an impact on my relationship. So I'd probably say it really early because like, what's the point? It's going to be a waste of time if you can't adjust with me.
Yeah, I know. I definitely have put it on my, dating profiles. Yeah. And part of it is for me, like, I think I spend so much time explaining ADHD that I don't necessarily want to have to do that in my relationships. I want someone to have somewhat of an understanding of like, all right, like sense. I understand what this is because either I have it or, my best friend or my partner. Or,
right.
So yeah, no, I think that is, because we don't have to want to mask. Like masking is exhausting.
That's a really big thing I try to talk about too, is like when someone is demasking, unmasking, it's because they love you and they feel comfortable, right? So really helping to see the neurotypical partner for them to understand that. The one thing I also want to say that I talk about a lot in couples therapy, last thing, is a lot of neurodivergent people communicate via memes. So like allow them to do that, right? They're like, oh, this made me think of you. Like that is communication, and don't undersell that. Like they don't need to text you like, I love you, have a wonderful day. If I send you a cute puppy, that's what I'm saying.
I'm laughing because yes, I very much relate to that.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else that you think would be really helpful for neurodivergent couples? And I know that part of, you said you do a lot of work really specifically helping women. What would you say is unique to the female experience, or those who identify as female, in a neurodivergent relationship, that what's that perspective that for someone listening right now that's going to help them feel really sort of understood and kind of seen?
Yeah, I think it's just to really sit with like you have needs and your needs matter. And so I think just societally, most neurodivergent women mask really damn well because they need it to, right? So as you start to pull back the mask, I talk to a lot of women about yes, I know we are trying to change gender roles, but in a lot of ways they still exist within a household, right? And so for a lot of neurodivergent women, housework is actually quite challenging, like remembering to do laundry. I mean, neurodivergent people in general, but for women, they tend to feel that like extra burden of
Hmm.
like, I now have a child, I'm trying to keep my home. So really saying to your partner, hey, I know my brain, and if you want me to keep our kid alive, I'm not doing laundry, right? So let's get a service to do that. We have enough money to do it. Like, no shame in that game. Like, I need this. So really just owning, like, I have a need. We need to do this other thing.
Are there any particular resources that you would suggest if people want to learn more about topics related to this, and including your website?
Yeah. So there's neurodiverse couples counseling. If you just type that into Google, you're going to see a plethora of people who specialize in this. And the differences between that and, let's say, a marriage and family therapist is just they have a lens of different ways that neurodiverse brain communicates, and typically an implicit understanding of the different neurodiversity. And then my website is connection-squared. So you can find information there. And I do support for a couple, but also each member, right? So I have like a non-ADHD partner support group
Hmm.
everyone in the relationship is getting the support they need.
Hmm. All right. I think I had like another question, and then I forgot what it was that I was going to ask. I can look at the transcript. That's an accommodation that I make for myself.
Ooh,
Um,
that's good.
I remember. Okay. Going back to the sort of idea of couples counseling, I have heard, and I've also, I think, experienced that just working with say a marriage and family therapist, that if they don't understand ADHD and different like neuro like divergence and how that shows up, I think it can often do more harm than good. Would you
Oh,
agree with that?
oh my gosh. I can't tell you how many people have come to me where the autistic individual has been labeled narcissistic, kind of seen as an asshole. I don't know if I can curse. And then the ADHD person as like not caring because they're not keeping up with things, or almost like immature. Yes, there really is this. And typically, what happens when they're going to couples therapy is the neurodivergent one is already kind of bad, again using quotation marks, so a lot of their deficits are coming out and they don't even know why, or it really can do harm. And plus, think about how many neurodivergent people have gone to therapy and it's been terrible for them because the person didn't know of neurodivergence. So there's also this real fear around therapy.
Yeah, and I think it's a legitimate fear. Like,
Oh yeah.
and I think that's why it's really important to ask questions about like how much experience do you have working with people with ADHD? With like what percentage of your practice is that?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you look on things like Psychology Today, and if they have like more than 10 things listed as their specialty, they don't specialize in anything.
Yeah.
And I just think that's important to understand as a consumer of mental health services, because not everyone understands this stuff. It's,
Right.
I think sometimes, people like you and I, like we're in this space, and like, so we know the nuances, but a lot of people don't.
Right.
So the website again is connection-squared.com. Dr. Ali Arena, thank you so much. This has been delightful. We finally did it.
I know, we finally did it. I feel like it was a good one. I'm happy about that. Thank you so much for having me.
It was a pleasure. If you could stick around for just a minute, I'd like to ask our guests just a couple extra questions that we will put on our Patreon feed for our patrons. So do you have just another minute or so to hang out?
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
We're good.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We will catch you next week. And if you want to hear what we talk about after the outro music cues up, then become a patron. Go to ADHDrewired.com/Patreon at $5 a month. You can get the bonus content. So we'll catch you next time. And that is all for today. And thank you to Allie for being on today's show. Do you have any stories or questions about your own neurodivergent relationships? Why not check out our free Facebook community? Go to ADHDrewired.com/community to apply and go ahead and start a discussion or join in on the ADHD fun. And if you love this show, why not let us know by leaving a rating and review on your favorite podcast player? We would really appreciate it. Your ratings and reviews help get this show in front of more earballs and help spread the message that you don't have to go on your ADHD journey alone. Want a taste of group coaching? If you're not a patron yet, then another way that you can support this podcast is by going to ADHDrewired.com/Patreon, where members at just $25 a month can join me every fourth Tuesday of the month for a monthly group coaching call. And that is happening today on October 24th at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 Eastern. And that is for patrons at just $25 a month or more. Just want to support the show? And patrons at $5 a month or more can get uninterrupted episodes of the show with announcements at the end so you don't miss out on what's going on here at ADHD Rewired. Then if you're looking for round-the-clock, real-time accountability with some guided sessions to help you tackle things like cleaning, decluttering, writing, creative work, checking in, and more, you can get started in our Adult Study Hall community at adultstudyhall.com. And our Pomodoro dance party is coming up, so check adultstudyhall.com to learn more. And one more big thanks to Ali Arena for joining me today, and thank you to all of our listeners, supporters, and the greater ADHD community for continuing to help make this show possible. That's it for now. We'll catch you next week.